Hollywood often shows medieval battles as grand and coordinated, but the truth was much more chaotic. In reality, the first few seconds of clash were a mess. Nearly half of the soldiers at the front tripped within the first 15 seconds. The ground was muddy, uneven, and filled with hidden roots. What started as an advance quickly became a scramble just to stay upright. Instead of dramatic charges, these battles kicked off with confusion and fear. Soldiers stumbled forward, shoved by the crowd behind them, trying not to fall. The battlefield was anything but smooth. It was rough terrain that could take you out before the enemy even got close. Slipping meant more than embarrassment. It could mean being trampled or crushed by your own side. Historical records and archaeological digs at sites like Toten back this up. Many of the bones found were broken from falls or being stepped on, not from weapons. The real danger in those opening moments came from the ground and the panic. If you were wearing armor, things got worse. A full set could weigh 45 to 55 pounds, turning every step into a struggle. Even without armor, carrying a weapon, shield, and thick boots made balance tough. You weren't a poise hero. You were exhausted, trying to stay on your feet while the crowd around you pushed forward. Look at actual battlefield maps and visuals from historical sites. Mud, rocks, and uneven ground were everywhere. Soldiers slipped and fell in the thick muck. Some were injured before even seeing an opponent. Now add weapons to the picture. These weren't elegant or flashy. They were basic tools built to do damage quickly. A war axe, for example, looked more like a heavy-duty woodcutter's tool than anything from a museum. It weighed about 5 pounds and took raw force to swing. But it came with problems. It could get stuck in armor or bone, making it hard to pull out. Those precious seconds of struggling could be deadly. Why were these weapons so common? Because they were cheap and easy to make. Many were adapted from farming tools. Soldiers, especially peasants forced to fight, didn't choose these weapons for style. They carried them because there was no alternative. Maces were equally brutal, just metal lumps on sticks, meant to smash bones through armor. And swords? Those iconic weapons were rare. Unless you were wealthy or well-equipped, you likely didn't have one. Swords were expensive and hard to make. Even when soldiers had them, they sometimes used a heavy end to strike in close combat, where there was no room to swing. Most fighters carried spears. They were cheap, quick to produce, and deadly in tight groups. But a snapped spear or one stuck in a body could leave you wide open. These weapons weren't designed to last. They were built for a few solid hits, then tossed aside. Actual recovered weapons from sites like Visby tell the story. Chipped blades, bent shafts, and dented heads showed just how rough these fights really were. Nothing elegant, just the brutal reality of survival. Now, let's talk about armor. It looked impressive, but it was far from perfect. Chainmail and plate armor did offer protection, but they also weighed you down and cooked you alive in the sun. Within minutes, the inside of a helmet could hit over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Sweat poured into your eyes. Every breath felt like you were inhaling steam. Plate armor covered the body and added serious bulk. Moving fast was an option. Dodging? Nearly impossible. Fights dragged on, and that weight wore soldiers down fast. Exhaustion set in before the real combat even began. And despite all that armor, many still suffered. Blunt weapons could break bones through steel. Studies show that around 40% of fallen knights had broken bones even though their armor was still intact. Helmets were especially tough. They blocked your vision and muffled sound. You were stuck in a metal box, sweating, barely seeing or hearing anything. It protected your head, but it also made it harder to sense danger. Visuals from reenactments and historical finds show the strain. Scarred armor, dented helmets, and worn-out fighters. Some soldiers didn't fall to weapons. They collapsed from heat exhaustion, overwhelmed by the very gear meant to protect them. And through all of this, something else set in, something armor couldn't stop. Fear. Not fear of the enemy, but of the chaos itself. The noise, the confusion, the helplessness. You were surrounded by hundreds of others, pushing, shouting, gasping, and the sound of metal and pain crashing all around you. It wasn't heroic. It wasn't clean. It was loud, messy, and terrifying. And for those who were there, Staying alive meant fighting the battlefield, the weight of your gear and your own panic, before a single blade ever reached you. Your head throbs with noise, so loud it drowns out your thoughts. Combat studies say up to 70% of soldiers made involuntary sounds during battle, not battle cries, just fear escaping in grunts and shouts. It only adds to the confusion. The battlefield becomes a blur, dust, blood, and panic cloud your vision. Shapes move around you, but you can't tell friend from foe. Then someone rushes toward you. Instinct takes over. You swing. Too late. You hear a familiar voice or groan. You've hit one of your own. Historical records show friendly fire wasn't rare. Mistakes like this happen in up to 10% of some battles. Guilt hits, but there's no time to dwell. The fight doesn't stop. In battles like those at Cassie, some soldiers froze. Not because they were wounded, but because their minds shut down. The fear became too much. You feel it too. Your weapon hangs useless in your hand. Your feet won't move. You're stuck while the world spins around you. This isn't weakness. It's the brain trying to cope with something it was never meant to handle. Experts call it battle mind. Your vision narrows. You stop seeing faces and start reacting to motion alone. Logic disappears. Instinct takes over. That's how things get even more deadly. For many, that mental strain was too much. Historical accounts say as many as 40% of soldiers ran before the real fighting began. They weren't cowards. They just chose survival over fear that couldn't be pushed aside. The truth is, no training could fully prepare anyone for this. Our visuals show it clearly. Chaotic reenactments where no one is in control. Tight crowds crashing into each other, panic everywhere. The mental damage ran deep. Many soldiers walked away with scars you couldn't see. Shaken, empty, lost in the aftermath. And just as you try to steady your nerves, a new fear steps in. One that's far more immediate. Injury. When a weapon connects, everything changes. Imagine it, a warhammer slamming down. The impact isn't a clean slice. It's a crushing blow. Armor doesn't always help. In fact, many night casualties came from powerful strikes to the head or neck. Blunt force that shattered bones and left men crumpled where they stood. You don't feel bravery, you feel pain. A sharp jolt wipes away sound and thought. Your arm goes limp. Or worse, your legs give out. You're no longer in the fight. You're just trying to understand what's happened. Wounds weren't clean cuts. They were deep, jagged gashes. A hard hit to the chest or thigh could bleed you out in minutes. Not hours, minutes. Warm blood soaks your clothes. You're dizzy, your hands can't stop it, and no one's coming to help. Even if you survive the first blow, things could still get worse. Medical care was almost non-existent. Battlefield surgery had success rates around 30%. If you were treated at all, it might be with a hot blade to stop the bleeding. Cauterization. It saved some lives. It ended others. Records from 15th century monasteries show what often followed. Infection. That's what really killed many soldiers. Dirty bandages. Filthy hands. No real medicine. A cut became a death sentence in just a few days. Picture yourself lying in the dirt. The shock keeps the pain away at first. But it's coming. You feel it sharpen, pulsing through your body. You can't stand. You reach for your wound, but your fingers slide in blood. The fight moves on without you. No one stops. There's no pause. Just wave after wave of boots passing by. You're alone with the injury. And for many, that was the end. Visuals from sites like Toten confirm this. Skeletons with crushed bones, not clean kills. Evidence of repeated strikes. Even after men were down, these weren't dramatic sword duels. They were brutal, desperate brawls until nothing was left to break. Even after battle ended, the suffering didn't. If you were lucky enough to still be standing, the field around you looked nothing like a victory. There were no cheers, no banners. Just silence. A grim, eerie quiet as reality set in. You look around. The fighting's over, but no one is celebrating. Some soldiers drop where they stand, too tired to speak. Others lean on their weapons, hollow-eyed. Accounts from the time describe men so drained they couldn't even sit up. You smell the blood, the damp soil, the stench of exhaustion. There's no sense of triumph, only the dull realization that you survived when others didn't. And then comes the scavenging. You start picking through what's left, not for trophies, but for survival. You strip weapons, boots, armor from the fallen, friend or enemy, not out of greed, but because you might need it tomorrow. Sources say up to 20% of soldiers use whatever they could find, even farming tools turned into makeshift weapons. Your hands move without thinking. You pull off a dented helm, unbuckle a chest plate. Someone wore it hours ago. Now it's just a means to stay alive. Medieval battles weren't heroic. They were brutal fights to survive. No glory, no honor, just fear, exhaustion, and loss. Nearly half fell before weapons clashed. Endurance, not victory, was the only prize.